Are you enjoying Super September here on Transit Unplugged? I know I am. It's been great talking to these leaders, and today we bring you another amazing episode on Transit Unplugged podcast. I'm Paul Comfort, and I recently had the pleasure to sit down and talk with Jon Gary Herrera, who is the president and CEO of Via Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio, Texas, one of the oldest and coolest cities in America. That's where they got the Alamo, and the Riverwalk. We talk about all that. And it's some really interesting things about it. You may not have known about some big rock musicians and the connections they have, British rock musicians, the connections they have with San Antonio. But Jon Gary took over the role as CEO earlier this year and has already taken it an amazing direction. They recently won a big referendum with the voters who have turned in extra money for them. And we talk about what they did to earn that trust. And we also talk about the fact that for the last 2 years running, they've led the nation in customer satisfaction. And we ask them, how have you done that? Because that's big. All that and more on this in-depth interview, which is both philosophical and practical, with my new friend, Jon Gary Herrera. We're going to go visit him too next year and do an episode of our TV show there so we can show you everything we're talking about. It's going to be fantastic, just like this interview is on today's episode with Jon Gary Herrera, President and CEO of Via Metropolitan Transit in San Antonio.
Paul, great to be here. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely, brother. San Antonio is one of my favorite cities. My dad spent some time down there when he was in the service. So tell us some about, San Antonio. I mean, I know it for the Alamo, right, and the Riverwalk, which is probably what a lot of people think about. Sure. But you just told me something interesting. It's vying to be the oldest city in America?
It is. It's over. We celebrated 300 years as a community 5 years ago. And 300 years ago, this community was established. Incredible to think that it's older than our beloved United States of America, but it was indeed operating as a community prior to our independence as a nation. And it's a beautiful city. I'm lucky I get to call it home. I grew up here as well, have many, many relatives in and around this part of Texas and San Antonio. Just a great city, a great community.
Yeah. So this is where Davy Crockett, was he the one that came to the Alamo? Is that what I learned when I was in school?
Absolutely. Right. There's a number of urban legends that happen around, the Davy Crockett and David Bowie as well.
The Bowie knife, Jim Bowie, right?
The Jim Bowie. There you go. Yeah. Jim Bowie.
Well, you're thinking about David Bowie, the rock star.
I am. Well, and maybe I'm doing that purposely, Paul, because he has admitted the rocker before he passed away, David Bowie.
Yeah.
That wasn't his real name. His Bowie is his stage name. He took it from Jim Bowie. Because in England, they would show the Alamo as, a really popular American film, and he fell in love with the idea. And so he has admitted that is something that he's named after. I mean, to keep on this British theme here as well, Paul, it's also interesting that the gentleman who was with Genesis, I'm slipping on his name right now.
The drummer?
The drummer, yes.
Yeah. Phil Collins, is that who you're talking about?
Phil Collins, there you go.
Okay.
Phil Collins. He has the largest private collection of Alamo artifacts in the world.
Really?
He has been fascinated with the Alamo as well, and he has been buying, Alamo artifacts for 40 years. He has just recently donated a big portion of his artifacts over to the Alamo for this new museum, and it's going to be compliments of Phil Collins.
So they're building, I've been there a couple times. Are they building something new?
Yes, absolutely. Big investment happening at the Alamo, and a big investment includes a big new museum / visitor center. There's a whole reimagining of the grounds itself to bring out more of a look of what it was indeed as in existence back in the day.
Yeah.
It's incredible amount of investments and reimagining that's going on over there.
Well, hopefully it'll be done. I want to come out there and film an episode of our show. I'd love to see that again, man.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so we've talked about the city itself. Oh, and talk about the Riverwalk, man. I love the Riverwalk. It's probably my favorite one in the country.
It's also another moment that makes it super, super unique is this Riverwalk. the San Antonio River meanders through our downtown area. And it was indeed a moment of this community recognizing the importance of water over the history of this area and this region. But then developing around it in such a meaningful way, it's very unique. There are plenty of other communities and cities that have rivers that meander or go through their urban parts. But the way that this one has really integrated into the architecture and the landscape and the actual businesses themselves is super unique, that I don't know of anywhere else in the United States, much less the world, that is quite similar to this. It's a great experience.
I've been there with my wife and kids. We walked it, in the evening and rode the boats and all that.
That's right.
The lights that come over. I've had so much fun at restaurants there with friends of mine, laughing and joking under this. The atmosphere and the vibe is fantastic, Jon. It's just something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So tell us about one more question. Do you know the population of the area you serve there in San Antonio?
So San Antonio it also happens to be one of the fastest growing communities in the United States.
That's what I thought.
What we call San Antonio proper is about 1.7 million. The county which San Antonio operates, finds itself within, just about 2 million people.
Okay. And VIA serves what? The whole county or just the city or what?
It's both, but we don't serve the whole county, but we serve 99% of the city of San Antonio.
Okay, I got you. So tell us about the transit system. What services do you offer, et cetera?
So we are the largest system that is a bus-only system in the United States as its main mode. We do have a microtransit system that has launched in 2019. We took a pause during COVID, but now we got about 5 zones. And together, those 5 zones or 6 zones are generating a great deal of interest and ridership. But the workhorse of our system here is, of course, our fixed route bus delivered routes that we have here.
And do you operate yourselves or do you have contractors or how do you do all that?
We operate them ourselves and we operate them out of one garage. So we have something very unique about VIA in San Antonio is we operate over 500 buses out of one depot. Typically the size of a depot, or at least number of buses that a depot will support is around 250 to 300. Well, we're doing 500 out of one location. But that's also because this location we've had since 1947, so it's been around for quite a while. But we serve all parts of the community with these vehicles and doing so every day because of the hard work of our employees.
Now, when Jeff Art was there, I visited. I'd had him on the podcast. I think I did it in person, and you'll have this cool round, circular building. Yes. Are you still in there?
I am. That is where my offices are at. That's what we call the grand building. Okay. That's separate than our main facility that I was just referencing in terms of where our bus yard is.
Yeah.
But this facility used to be a turn of the century railroad union station. And the railroad union station, decorated together with, you might remember the stained glass that really adored it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, it's incredible architecture out of this building. We're proud holders of this history here and continue to operate out of it.
That's amazing. Now you've been in that job. You've been there for a while. Tell us something about your background. Yeah.
So, I'll be I'm finishing my 7th year, going on my 8th year here with this agency, with VIA. Right. But as of January of this year, the board of trustees handed me the keys to be the president and CEO.
Keys to the kingdom.
Hit the ground running in January. I blinked and it's 8 months, later. But great things happening here at VIA. A lot of excitement that's happening, Paul, because of the opportunity that we have. We're one of the few transit agencies in the United States, Paul, that's actually going to be receiving additional money coming in next January. We're going to be getting an additional sales tax percentage coming in from the citizens of San Antonio who took the vote to reallocate some sales tax in perpetuity over to VIA, and that starts in January. So those are going to lead to big investments, and those big investments will lead to big improvements for our system.
That's amazing. Yeah, I recently had Mark Ash on the podcast. I know you know him and work with him from TransPro. And Mark was proposing this idea, and it ties in with the documentary that we hope to film next year, which is, what's wrong with transit America? Why only 5% of Americans ride transit?
Sure.
And what we can do about it. But Mark says, while less than 5% of Americans ride transit, 84% of the community sees value in it. And he talks about, making sure that we focus not just on our ridership, but also on messaging the other 84%. And when I asked him, Jon, who in your mind, Mark, has the best transit system in America? He said, you do. He said that for 2 years in a row, San Antonio has led the nation in customer satisfaction. And that's what he feels is the most important. So you must be doing something right. Talk to us about that.
And to get a compliment from such a professional and somebody who's actually very passionate about what transit does and improving transit is a great compliment to us. I definitely appreciate Mark saying that and being that evangelist, as we call it, on the customer experience. So, I'll describe this, Paul, I also came from the private sector before I came over to this industry. And I brought with me the absolute, embedded idea that it is about that customer experience is what's going to be at the core of your adoption of your service. And coming into this agency and coming into VIA, keeping that focus of what is important to the community, but what is important to the customer. And the customers will tell you, that my whole business career, I have learned early on that the customers will tell you what's important to them. They will either sometimes verbally tell you, or they'll tell you by their adoption of your service or adoption of your product. And if you listen to that, they're handing you gifts. They're handing you what I call a gift of improvements. And doing something with those gifts is the way I think we distinguish ourselves, because we take a meaningful approach, just as we're doing this year, as we're preparing our budgets for next year. We're taking meaningful approaches about what are the things that the customers have just told us recently that are important to them. And we're going to translate that into meaningful improvements. And then we're going to tell them that we're doing that too, as well. So we can make that full rounded connection to that customer suggestion, the customer expectation, and then the delivery of that. And I think that's in a big way of why we're experiencing such good customer experience and relation scores from our customers. Because, as every business wants to say it, because we listen to our customers, but in this case, I will definitely say, well, not only do we listen, but we act upon what they say.
And what have they been telling you? I mean, obviously, you've won them over because they just voted to give you money. So,
yes.
So what are they telling you?
And that's an important distinction too, as well, Paul, because back to your point that it's less than 5% of San Antonians are taking the service on a daily basis, but many of them have had experience with our service, on other aspects. Maybe it's a park and ride to a Spurs game. Maybe it's a park and ride to the Alamo Dome, which is a big multi-purpose facility that we have here. But then it's at the core of what they know and appreciate is we're connecting people to jobs. At the end of the day, that's the number one reason folks are taking our service, is to get to a job. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that that's going to be powering the economy. Those are the things that I believe our investors and our customers have come to appreciate. And again, we're in a good position to be getting additional dollars that they have allocated over, knowing that it's going to be dollars well spent.
So you're hearing them say that's what they value, and that's what you're providing. Yeah,
absolutely.
How many trips would you say you're providing a day or a year, whatever, on your bus? Do you know? So
this past year, we delivered over 30 million passenger trips in this system, but we know we can do more. So I'm going to say that 30 million for me is the baseline as I come in as president and CEO. I'm only going to increase that number. I only want to increase that number from year to year because I know that we can do more and serve more because we're going to get new money, and new money is going to be new investments into quality, and the quality of the service is going to attract more ridership. We deliver good customer experience, as you heard, so that's a good moment too, that we can be confident that once we attract somebody that's not riding us today, and then they decide to start taking us in the future, we're confident that they're going to be handled really well. And that's an important part of this equation of delivering that value to the community, as Mark likes to emphasize. Delivering that value, you deliver that value, the ridership's going to come.
Right.
And it's not starting off with ridership. If this was only about ridership, Paul, all of transit in the United States would be free. We would open the doors and just let everybody, ride it for free. It's not. It's about the quality of the service that we want to deliver, and doing so in exchange for very small investment from the consumer, and to continue to invest in the quality, as I keep referencing, and that will return ridership.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transit Unplugged. Right now, we're in the middle of Super September. We have an incredible lineup of guests. Paul is talking to leaders from some of our greatest transit systems, including New York, Chicago, San Antonio, and more. Be sure to subscribe to Transit Unplugged where you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Now let's get back to this week's episode of the Transit Unplugged podcast.
So Mark is big on that. He pointed, when he's done surveys across the country, by the way, when they've asked the 84%, what do you value most in the public transit system that you don't ride, but you still value it enough to pay for it? Number one is access to jobs, just what you said. And then number two is helping the elderly and people with disabilities, which we do through our ADA services, right, and our senior services. And then third would be helping lower income people, get to other appointments, not just jobs, but get to social services and health appointments and all. And that's what you all have made a priority, right? I mean, that's why Mark told me when he said the best, I think he meant the best in terms of meeting what the customers want. You've proven it 2 years in a row through these surveys and through a big vote from your voters.
Paul, I had this discussion with Mark that I'm still putting together this idea of the industry and in particular, transit, ourselves. To me, there's a lot of similarities to college or university. And what I mean by that is, if you take a snapshot of colleges and universities today, of the individuals that are going there, they're going to be low income. They're going to be kids, and I call them kids, right? Because it was a long time ago since I went. Yeah. But these kids are part-time jobs. I have one that's in college right now, and if she were to ask how much she makes, she would say under $25,000 a year because she doesn't have a full-time job. Her full-time job is to go to school, right? But we don't measure that success of that university based upon what that individual is at that moment of time. We base that value of that university after they graduate and what they become. So a lot of what transit does is making those connections and a snapshot of their lives that they need that affordability, but that doesn't define the group that we take for the entire span of our existence. Great example of that is we just had a chair of our board that was a tier one supplier of Toyota. He has made multi-millions of dollars as a manufacturer over the course of his career. But he says, he would pronounce this every time if he didn't have VIA back in the day when he needed to go to the community college, or he needed to then go to the four-year college here, he would not have been able to graduate and become the path that he went on. So I think that's another great example of where the value of transit is a tremendous value, just like colleges, universities, but we're not measuring a college or university, to Mark's point, by their attendance, right? Or the number of students they have. Oh, well, they got a lot of students, they must be successful. No, what's going to be successful is what their output is, right?
Right, who they become, right?
Yeah, and what they become.
Yeah.
And we have a big role in that, in the community that we serve. Not only for those that are needing the help at the moment that they have, but they're also, as they get elderly as well, that we're that safety net for them, that they know that they can continue to enjoy the ability to get in and around this community. That's another aspect that is a great value. We definitely take that seriously.
John, when I first started, I worked for Department of Aging. That was 38 years ago now. I can't believe it. And I was a transportation coordinator. And every day I felt wonderful because I was helping hundreds of people on average be able to get out of their homes, go to the grocery store, go to doctors, come to the senior centers. I mean, we play a big role in that, don't we? And I'm sure VIA does in your community.
It's a big role that we play, but it's also a role that is so meaningful. And I don't necessarily only mean that from a social service standpoint. I mean that from a human standpoint. I mean
Yeah,
that
I
from
love
an
that.
economy standpoint too. Because we're connecting people to their doctors, we're connecting people to their grocery stores, we're connecting people, to hospitals, and it becomes a real piece of an individual's life where they don't have to worry about how they get there. They can worry about the things that they really need to worry about.
I think you've done a great job of talking about the current status there and the role you're playing in the community. Let's look into the future. You said that, under your leadership, you're hoping to see some increases in ridership. And do you have any exciting projects or initiatives you're working on that'll raise the bar for VIA?
Absolutely. The mantra that we have here, Paul, is that we're in the middle of some big investments. These big investments will, for the first time, will have an ART, Advanced Rapid Transit, or BRT, for those that my professional colleagues that listen to this podcast. For the first time, we're going to establish our very first bus rapid transit line. We call that the Green Line. It's going to go north-south in our community and go down a major corridor, major thoroughfare. Then we're going to immediately right after that establish a second one, which is a Silver Line that will go east-west, and they'll intersect each other in our downtown business district. But those big investments for the first time here in San Antonio are going to be some of the largest capital projects that this community has seen other than highways.
Yeah.
But to see that VIA is the one that is executing on this program is an incredible position for us. But that's a big investment. Also coming along with those advanced rapid transit systems, the BRT systems, we also are going to be doubling the number of zones that we have with our VIA Link, our microtransit service.
Oh, very nice.
And so that also is going to be a big investment. And then, of course, we just launched, and our board just approved 2 months ago, a better bus plan where we are reimagining what our system should be delivering and investing in that moment. So all of these together are big investments that we're making. Those big investments are going to become big impacts because these big investments are really going to raise the quality of the service that we have out in the community. I keep telling folks every chance I get here in San Antonio is the bus rapid transit line, because we've only been a bus only system our entire life, right? Our entire existence. This bus rapid transit system is as close as we're going to get to rail. And it's a rail-like service. And this community is going to look at our system and the way we deliver service in a completely different light once we start delivering that high level of service. And that's going to be a moment also, as you're talking about the future, is that broad look that our community gives us in terms of what are we doing to keep ourselves in tune with technology, in tune with what is indeed possible in the future. Those are the type of investments that we're bringing. But they're all going to come down to, big impacts that will continue to have big positive impacts on our community.
You've had a pretty interesting career journey before becoming CEO. You mentioned you're in your 8th year working for the agency. Most of that time was as senior vice president for public engagement. But then, like you mentioned, you worked in the private sector quite a while. What leadership principles did you pull from that? And how have they helped shape you and what you're bringing to VIA?
It's a great question. I mean, it's a number of approaches that I find myself now in this president and CEO spot that I can tell I've learned this learned behavior over the course of my career. Something I learned early and often at the very beginning is empathy. What is it like to be our customers, right? That's what I mean by empathy. Walk a mile in their shoes, empathy. Giving that great deal of focus as a leader will help me design and develop the types of improvements or culture that we want to be able to deliver for the community. The other part that empathy comes into play is how you lead a team. And all of us have had different types of bosses over the course of our careers. And I find myself really admiring those that had a great deal of empathy and understanding that each one of us are motivated differently. And each one of us are humans, and we're all different from each other, and to treat us that way too. And I've seen that being brought with me in my type of approach on leadership. It's so easy sometimes in this corner office to try to get everything done at once. I've heard this term many years ago, but I've kept this in the back of my mind. It's called boiling the ocean. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, that you can do too much and you would boil the ocean. And if you boil the ocean, you may get a lot accomplished and you use a lot of energy to do it, but you're not accomplishing what you should be doing. You'll kill all the land, right? All the wildlife. All the fish. So it's this balance that I see myself in a leadership position of keeping an immense amount of attention on the goals and objectives that we want to accomplish, but having the sense enough to know that those also have to be done by others, not just myself. Because if we don't depend on others to deliver it, I'll be working 80-hour weeks and I won't last very long working 80-hour weeks. But it is those moments of leadership that I've learned over the years. One more comment on things that I've learned. I've also seen how products and or services have changed an industry. And I'll give you an example of that. I was with the cable industry for 16 years. I worked for Time Warner Cable in various degrees of responsibilities there within that Fortune 50 company that we became. And one of the moments that has always stuck with me is when I joined that industry when we were just delivering video, cable, analog cables, matter of fact, to the community that we serve. Then we launched this little thing called high-speed data. And high-speed data and the internet and the delivery of that really became that massive focal point for this industry, and it still remains. And it very much is that moment that it changed the industry. It also changed the way consumers saw our industry as well. Just in 2 minutes here, Paul, I'll explain what I mean by that is that we would do customer surveys as a cable company, and we do a customer survey, and the customers would say, you could do better, right? Because the cable industry hasn't had the best, success.
That's right. Yeah.
In that aspect, right? You can do better, is basically the kind way I'm saying what customers would tell us. But then we'd ask them, hey, what do you think of the company that delivers high-speed data? Oh, I love that company. That company is innovative. That company is fun to work, fun to interact with and fun to work with. And I really appreciate what they're doing. Well, it's the same company.
Wow.
It's the same company that was delivering cable. It's the same company that's delivering the high-speed data. So it's that moment. So fast forward to where we are today, Paul, is I believe what we're on the cusp as an industry with this micro transit solution that we have very similar to Uber and Lyft is that high-speed data moment that we have in this industry. I don't believe that we have really figured out the true potential of this micro transit solution and system that we have. But the fact that we're all finding varying aspects of delivery and success with it, it reminds me a lot of what we were doing back in the 90s with high-speed data and seeing how that changed the industry. So
and why was that?
My little long but short story on that, but it's something that I bring with me.
Yeah, I love that. Let's just for one more minute, tell me what did you all get out of that? What was the lesson? Just as something new, people liked it better? What was the lesson?
It was indeed that the consumer's going to identify a value, and they're going to associate that value with your company, right? We had too many years, I think, you eroded away on that value
Yes.
on the cable side, on the video side, because at that time, we didn't produce the content that we were delivering. So there was no relationship with, let's give you an example, whether you liked the show on HBO, well, that wasn't because of your cable company back in those days. Now I think they're all owned, by one or two. But there was no value. As soon as high-speed data comes around, now there's value that company is delivering, and I can associate that value. And I think that's a great a moment in that industry that I am seeing here. Granted, we still get valued on our fixed route, but the fact that we can deliver this new type of value has put us in a different light with those 95% of the community that doesn't take us. We're now a consideration in those conversations that we never had before. So I see that as some of those similarities.
That's great. Jon Gary Herrera, thank you so much for taking a few minutes with us today and sharing with us your philosophies and your experience and all the great things happening there in San Antonio, one of America's oldest cities, but it's got some of the newest, coolest stuff going on, man.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the time you spent with me this afternoon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transit Unplugged, the world's #1 transit executive podcast. I'm Julie Gates, executive producer of the podcast. Many thanks to the team that makes this show happen. Host and producer Paul Comfort, producer Chris O'Keefe, editor Patrick Emile, associate producer Cindy Raskin, and consultants Dan Meisner and Jonas Woost at Bumper. Transit Unplugged is being brought to you by Midaxo, passionate about moving the world's people. If you would enjoy behind-the-scenes insights and updates from the show, sign up for our weekly newsletter, which has links to can't-miss conversations with the biggest names in mobility. Head to transitunplugged.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Transit Unplugged.